hands up if you've been at church here in the last 4 weeks. This is the 5th Sunday of the series, right? So hands up if you've been in the last. This isn't like we're not taking a register. Just to get an idea. Who's been here like for some? Who's been here for one of them? Keep your hand up if you were here for 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to test you then. So tonight, Adam asked me to talk about apostolic, which is a word I've only just learned how to say. So you have to bear with me. But there's 4 others. What is the fivefold ministry? What do you remember? Just share with the person next to you. What do you remember from the last 4 weeks? What do you remember? What have people at the front spoke about in the last 4 weeks? And if there's silence, then I'll change the sermon and recap the whole thing. No, I'm joking. So just with the people next to you, what do you remember from church in the last 4 weeks? Maybe it was a song, maybe it was a funny joke. Just with the person next to you, just buzz that for a few moments. And when you're done, just look back and smile sweetly, and I know that you've finished. Or just look at me, it's fine. It is a privilege to speak here today. I love Charlotte and Adam. They've done such a great job with this church. I was here, actually, at Oak Church's first ever service, and I met Wendy, right? And she was there as well. So we met each other, but we sort of didn't meet each other. But it's great to see the church. It's great to see all the young people earlier, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on. But the reason I asked you about what happened in the last 4 weeks is basically, I preach quite a lot. My wife gets really fed up with me preaching, to be honest. Is it 2 hours I speak for tonight? Is that a normal vibe? Thanks, yeah, thanks. It's an upgrade. What I try and do is just make one point every time I speak. Because I worked out once that if you're like a Christian or you go to church every week, you might go to about 40 services in a year, 42. Like, you've got to give yourself a holiday, and sometimes you just want to watch Netflix and chill with yourself. So either way, like 40 services a year, if you took away one thing from all of those sermons and all of those services and changed that about your life or did something different off the back of that, that would be quite tiring and you'd be doing really, really well. So for me, the 3-point sermon is unhelpful. But tonight I'm going to break my 1-point sermon rule and make 2 points. And I want to encourage you tonight. I've got the slides in wrong with it, John, but you're doing a great job already, mate. Just go to the one that says 1 and 2. I want to encourage you tonight to be a generalist. Turn to the person next to you and say, be a generalist. I do all this weird 90s preaching stuff because I really want you to remember it. Like, it kind of works when you say it. And the second one, which I won't get you to say, but is to continue to be an apostolic church. Continue to be an apostolic church. And I'll explain what that is in a few moments. Be a generalist and continue to be an apostolic church. I'll explain that in a moment. But the fivefold ministry, here are the 5 things. They're going to come up on the screen. Yeah, you're doing. Give him a round of applause. He's doing great. You like a round of applause, you guys, don't you? We'll try again. So apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And Adam promised me that someone would read the Bible passage before I spoke tonight, but that didn't happen. So do you want to just flick it up and I'll read it to you? It's from Ephesians. Contextually, Ephesians is an interesting book in the Bible. Adam can tell you more about this later, but it's attributed to St. Paul. And the verses we're looking at tonight are from chapter 4, verses 11 to 13, and it says, "So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for his works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ." So just go back to those 5 things. So you've been looking at the fivefold ministry and you've had different people come to talk about each one. But instead of telling you what an apostle is, I'm going to share a story of my own life. Has anyone ever heard of the Hub Church in Hitchin? A few people might have. Basically, 10 years ago, my wife and I decided that we wanted to plant a church in Hitchin, and we wanted to create a space where our friends that didn't go to church could come along, feel at home and feel safe, where they could come along and explore faith and hear the good news about Jesus Christ. So we did that. Our vision statement as a church was a safe place to explore faith grow as family, and follow the example of Jesus. Is that right? Dave works there, so that was quite impressive for me. A safe place to explore faith. Anyway, I went away to Australia for a couple. I handed over the church to Martha, who leads it now, which is wonderful. Adam asked me to speak a bit about this. I went away to Australia to lead a church there and to kind of set up some new churches, suffering for Jesus by the beach. And to be honest, when I got there, it didn't work out. Has anyone ever had that in their life where you go to do something and you think that this is going to be really great, this is going to work really well, I'm going to get a really good tan, and lots of other things, God's going to move, and it didn't work out? Can anyone relate to that? Like their plans not working out? Just me? Yeah, no, like, and it was really hard. But I got offered a job at the diocese and came back. I wasn't planning on coming back, I was going to move to a different part of Australia. But when I came back, I got invited to this picnic of people at the Hub Church. So I had these amazing 8 years. We saw lots of people become Christians. We had an amazing team. We handed it over. I went to Australia and I went back to this picnic of people at the Hub. And this young lad came up to me. I'd never met him before. And he said, "Who are you?" I said, "Oh, my name's Dan." And I said, "How do you know all these people?" And he said, "I go to the Hub Church." I'd never met this guy before, so I thought this is very exciting. Someone that went to the Hub Church I haven't met before. This is great. He said to me, "Have you heard of the Hub Church?" And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it. It's quite good, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, it's very good. It's very good. And I thought, this is great. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to play along a bit. And I was like, it's a good picnic, isn't it? The snacks are nice. And like, yeah. And off he went. Later on, we played rounders, as you do at picnics and all this stuff. And he ran up to me and said, "Did you create the Hub Church?" I thought it was lovely. And I was like, "No, I didn't. God created the Hub Church." But essentially, what an apostle does is sees the future. They create something, they plant something that is for the future. They have a vision for the future. And here's a photo from the Matrix. If I have any gifts in life, if I have anything to offer the churches, that when I meet with people, when they talk about church, when they talk about church planting, when they talk about new worshipping communities or fresh expressions, which is what I work in now for the diocese, when they talk about wanting to do something new, and you guys are doing new stuff all of the time, you are an apostolic church. A bit like The Matrix. Has anyone seen The Matrix? There's a new film coming out, so this isn't a dated reference anymore, young people. There's a new one coming out, Keanu Reeves in it. A bit like this, like stuff comes before my eyes, and when I'm talking to people, I can see the future. I can see what could be. Essentially, that's what an apostle does. They see what could be in the future. James, do you want to come up? This is James. Give him a round of applause. They're so smooth here. It's like Hillsong. Whoa, that needs some unpicking later on, Adam. I'll let you work that one out. James, you are incredibly brave for coming up. So James came along tonight with Dave, who's his friend, and you go to the Hub Church, right?
Yeah.
And we only just met each other a little while ago.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I think.
A few weeks. Is yours working? Here you go.
Is this working?
Oh, there you go. You got it now. First of all, what's the deal with the hair?
Well, we were supposed to be going to Berlin a couple of months ago, and we were going to do it for that, but I hadn't had my second COVID jab. So we put it off a little while, and we were both running marathons 1 week apart, so we thought we'd do it for that, get some attention for fundraising and stuff. Then we went on holiday together, and everyone seems to think it's a thing.
A thing, it's certainly a thing. Do you think that would suit me?
I think you're a bit old, mate. I mean, DP's pushing it, to be fair. But
okay, great. Jokes aside, I only told you about 10 minutes ago you were coming up, but it really seemed to fit in with what we felt like God might want to say tonight. Something exciting happened to you today?
I got baptised about 3 hours ago. Yeah.
And when I found out you were coming tonight, I texted Dave and said I'm going to ask him to speak at the front, but I'm not going to tell him until 2 minutes before, so he doesn't say no.
Yeah.
Why did you get baptised?
So I've struggled a lot with mental health issues in the past, and I've let a lot of people down. I've done a lot of things that I regret, and this year's been kind of a transformational year of my life, mainly thanks to Jesus. And I guess today was about outwardly moving on from the past and saying this is a new me. I'm following Jesus now, and I'm looking forward to the future.
So good. Well done. And the old question, for you now, and by the way, just to say it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have it all together, and it's going to be really hard, but you need to know it. But what difference does Jesus make in your life?
So through letting a lot of people down, a lot of people still love me, but it was never enough. And there's something about reading the Gospels and learning about the way, or figuring out the way that Jesus loves me, and learning about God's grace has sort of enabled me to forgive myself for a lot of the things I've done in the past, and finally move on and learn to love myself and others again. I think that's the difference that Jesus makes in my life.
It's amazing. Guys, give a round of applause. Thank you. And so you get the idea that an apostle sees something in the future, plays their part in creating that thing, speaks it into being, sees a vision of the future, and when it works really well, that thing develops like a kind of perpetual life that goes on changing people's lives. And we see that at Oak Church, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this later on, just the number of young people and adults that have been changed by this community. In how many years? 8 years you guys have, when did you start? 6.5 years. Oh, how long ago? Isn't that extraordinary? So today's passage, why don't you just load it back up for us? It's from Ephesians. John, you're doing so well. I keep moving around, don't I? Thank you so much. Just remind yourself of those words again. Just read it to yourself. So we've had prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, and apostles. And just for the mini theology section of this, I'm going to do something that's a bit cheeky and disagree with probably what's happened in the last 4 weeks. So can I check, in the last 4 weeks, has different people come and said, I'm an evangelist, this is what evangelists do, I'm an apostle, this is what apostles do, and they're all experts in all those areas. Is that about right, or did I get that wrong?
We haven't had too many experts, because that's not what we're about, but yeah, different people have spoken about what each ministry may mean.
Yeah. So I was doing some reading on this, and the way that I'd heard it in the kind of evangelical church over years is that you're called to do different ones of these things, and they kind of all felt a bit mutually exclusive. And so it was a bit like, you can only be an evangelist, or you can only be a prophet, or you can only be an apostle. I didn't even know what an apostle was when people used to tell me that I was an apostle, to be honest. I didn't really understand what it meant. And so I looked into it, and I did some reading, and I don't know if you're interested in this sort of stuff, but my sense is, from reading this passage and from doing a bit of the reading behind it, is that God actually wants us to be generalists. There's nothing wrong with specialising, there's nothing wrong with having gifts, and I'll share a bit about what I might perceive my gifts are, and you will have different gifts. But I think God wants us to be generalists. So when you look at this passage, I've heard people say to me before, I'm a teacher, my gift is teaching, and they're really exclusive about that. They're like, I don't do any of the other stuff because I'm a teacher. And when you look at the passage there, can you see the punctuation? Can you see the way it's punctuated? So it says, he gave the apostles, comma, the prophets, comma, the evangelists, comma, the pastors and teachers, comma, to equip his people for his work. And if you click forward just to the other one where I've written it out a bit bigger, there's probably a few forward. No, keep going, you're doing great. This is like in the Greek, when you translate it a bit further forward. Will probably be enough. Yeah, here we go. So if you translate it in the Greek, it comes out just like this. They use the word "and" at the end of every section. So it says, and he gave the apostles and the prophets, comma, and the evangelists, comma, and the shepherds and teachers. And there's no comma after shepherds, and there's no "and" before shepherds. And so what they reckon is that shepherds and teachers, pastors and teachers, come together. You can't have one without the other. You can't be a teacher without being a pastor. And so is the fivefold ministry actually a fourfold ministry? I don't know, but that seems to be what the Greek text says. The other slight challenge you have with it when you read it is whether it's apostles with a capital A or a small a. And let me just explain that for a few moments. So the apostles, capital A, is like the name that you give to the apostles. They were eyewitnesses of Jesus. They were often the people that took the faith, which was called the way in that culture at that time. It wasn't called Christianity, it was called the way of Jesus. The apostles were the people that were eyewitnesses to what Jesus did. Some of them went their own way. We know some of the stories, don't we, in the Bible? But they point towards a future with and without Christ. They point towards what's to come. They're the people that started the early church, but they're eyewitnesses, eyewitness accounts of Jesus, physical eyewitnesses. So I'm not one of them, but I do give an account of Jesus. In this one, they reckon that they were actually referring, that Paul in Ephesians was actually referring to the apostles. Now, whether he was using that as a picture or as an example, or whether he was using that as the literal apostles, it doesn't matter. Again, it strikes me that I don't think this passage is about having different gifts and saying, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. I think God is saying he wants us to be a generalist. And there's this great book I've been reading recently, if you just click forward. It's called Range. Has anyone read this book? No. It's by a guy called David Epstein. It's a really interesting book. And basically, the theory goes that if you want to be world class at something over a sustained period, if you want to be good at something over a sustained period of time, rather than just being a flash in the pan, you need to be a generalist. You need to be good, or at least try lots and lots of different things. And one of the examples he uses is Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, that because he did a calligraphy course at university, he was able to make the Mac look beautiful. He was able to make Mac OS look beautiful. The other example is Roger Federer, and he contrasts him with Tiger Woods. You know, Tiger Woods was really good for a short amount of time, and for whatever reason didn't quite manage to sustain it over a period of time. But Roger Federer has been world class for a long time. And basically they reckon that Roger Federer played basketball quite a lot when he was younger. In fact, right up until he became pro, when of course all he did was play tennis all the time. He played basketball and did cross-country runs and did lots and lots of different sports. And so as humans, this guy reckons we are wired to be generalists, to try different things. And so Lily, who led worship beautifully tonight, I just found out is a scientist. How good is that? I was going to tell her to take up being a worship leader full time, and then I realised that being a scientist probably pays a lot more than that, and that she should carry on doing that. But that's really good, isn't it? Isn't it good to have leaders like that in the church? People that can play music, can sing beautifully, and yet in her spare time she does a bit of science and saves the world. And I wonder what it would be for you. I wonder what extra thing you could take up. I wonder, as you look at the list of prophets, preachers, apostles, teachers, pastors, I wonder which one of them you feel like you fall into. Just bring it to mind at the moment. Which one's your strongest? Which one do you feel most drawn to? And which one could you try? I wonder which one you could try. Just think about that for a few moments. I believe in this new season of adaptability, God is calling us to be generalists, to just have a go at all of those things. To think a little bit about that. Because if you just focus on one, I used to think I was an evangelist, and I would do the evangelism stuff, sometimes at the detriment to the other things. And I would say, well, I don't do that stuff. Oh, I'm not going to do a very good sermon today because I'm not a teacher, I'm just an evangelist. You've heard me say this, I'm not very good at pastoral care, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm just an evangelist, and I'm just going to get people into the church, and then I'm not going to worry about them. But we need all of those gifts. The church needs all of those gifts. So just have a look again. Where do you feel most drawn to? And what could you try? What could you have a go at this week? What practically could you do to try out a different gift this week? So my first point, be a generalist. And the second thing, continue to be an apostolic church. My job in the diocese is to visit all of the different churches, to come along to services like this, to look at the churches that are starting new worshiping communities, that are reaching new people in new ways, that work with young people, that are younger and more diverse. And it's not a competition, but I just want to say you guys are one of the best churches. You come up in my conversations all the time. You're one of the churches I'm most excited about. And when we look at churches that can be an example to so many others, this church is that. I did a study on Oak Church in my second week of my job, where I watched all of your services online and in quite a lot of detail. And I just recorded like the different words that you used as a church, and recorded what my perception of what your vision was and what I saw as I looked at this church. And then I interviewed Mark Waterman. Do you know Mark, you guys? Who was kind of here from the beginning, an amazing guy. And Philippa, who's gone up to Birmingham. You're just lending her to Birmingham, right? And then she's gonna come back. And I interviewed them, and again I looked at words that they said, and it was so exciting and so encouraging to hear the words they used to describe this church. And one of the words that came out was team. I don't know if you're on team tonight, just lift up your badge, it says team. If you go on your website, the word team comes up time and time again. When someone stands at the front, the word team is said time and time again. When you see the way that the services are led with more than one person at the front, you get this sense of team. That doesn't happen in other churches. Oak Church is an apostolic church. Under Charlotte and Adam's leadership, it has changed so many young people's lives. You have something beautifully unique here. This is an apostolic place. These guys received a vision. A group of leaders, including Mark and David Walford and one or two others, came together. There was about 6 or 8 of you, and you had a vision of what could be into the future. You created that space. And quite a lot of you weren't there when that happened, but you get to come along and enjoy and hear the good news about Jesus because of those people. It's a self-perpetuating vision, an apostolic vision. And so my encouragement to you, Oak Church, is to carry on being an apostolic church. Even if you don't feel like being an apostle, even if you don't feel like that's your gift, to carry on doing that, carry on trying new things. I'm really encouraged to hear that tomorrow morning Charlotte and the team are doing this wonderful gathering for young mums. And if I was in the age bracket, I'd come along and get a gift. That sounds really, really great. But this is pioneering stuff. What you have to realise is that other churches aren't doing this stuff. No, it's not a competition. We don't compare ourselves to other churches, but you're in a beautifully unique place. This is a wonderful place, and I know it's a cold night, and I know there's a few empty chairs, but it's all good. Like when I came in today, there was this party going on there, and there was so much life, so much life. When I've joined in with your service tonight, I can see that there is so much life, and so I want to encourage you, Oak Church, as I've looked at you from afar and prayed for you and loved in a very small way being part of your journey, that you are an apostolic church, and I encourage you to go on being that and think about how you can play your part in that. That might be supporting apostles like Adam and Charlotte by showing up tomorrow and helping wash up or whatever they need. But that might be that you have a new idea. You have a new vision. You have something on your heart that God might be calling you to. Whoever you are, however insignificant you might feel you are, God might be calling you to do something new. And I encourage you to speak to the team and to do it. There's this quote from Walt Disney, which my wife hates me using. I just need to say that, but we're just going to get it up. I think it's the last slide, or one of the last slides. John, you're doing an amazing job. So if you go to the town centre of Luton, there's this massive, like, gaudy banner up on the wall as you come out of the train station, and it says, "If you can dream it, you must do it. If you can dream it, you must do it." And my wife says, "That's not true though, is it, Dan?" It's not true. It's a bit of a stupid phrase. I said, "Alex, you're not an apostle. You're not an apostle." I want to encourage you, however crazy your dream is, however crazy the thing that you feel like God might have said to you is, whatever your dream is, maybe you want to create the next COVID jab as an intern. Like maybe that's what you're going to do as a scientist. Maybe you want to set something up at school. Maybe you've seen things at school that you just don't feel comfortable with. You've got that kind of holy discontent. Like I encourage you to do it, to grab a group of people and say, "I've wondered about doing this." Maybe at work, there's that person you want to speak to, or you want to set something up. You want to get a community of people together. I encourage you to do it and to set a culture that we see in this church and we don't see in other places of giving something a go. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. I just said to Adam, you must work quite hard with all those things that your church is doing, like those notices. There seems to be something on every day. But what I love about this place is it's a place where you can try stuff, and it's a safe place to make mistakes. So I encourage you, if you can dream it, let's change Walt Disney's words slightly. If you feel like God might be calling you to do it, if God has put a dream or a vision on your heart, you must do it. You must do it. So, number 1, be a generalist. Try something new. And number 2, continue to be an apostolic church. Why don't we stand, if you're able? Do you normally pray at this point?